Hiya, in this section we're going to look at how you might find information about a company, how you might find the accounts and how you might navigate your way around those accounts. So the start point for most businesses, and I say most because I'm going to show you something slightly different shortly, is Companies House. So for UK businesses, they need to file their accounts on Companies House. So we go to the Companies House website, gov.uk, and then we would click Find Company Information. Scroll down and Start Now. And we then have a few options as to how we search the register. So we can type a name, Martin Meller, and click search. And there are businesses with that name in the title, but there are also individuals. So you can find me further down the page. We can type using company number. So if I type in the company number of my business, that would bring up just my company. Or we can search by name, and the business that I've selected for us to use is Bet365, and I'll tell you why in a second. And here, when we search Bet365, you'll see there are several businesses all with the same name, and it's the group that we're interested in. So Bet365 Group Limited. And here you'll see there's a company overview, there's filing history, there's details of people, charges relates to any debt that the business has. But if we go to filing history, that's where we'll find the accounts. And the second in the list down is the group of company accounts, and we can click on View PDF. So Bet365, the reason I've chosen it is it's one of the biggest private companies in the UK. So there's lots of information here, and what you'll find is the bigger a business is, the more information there is available. And so if we scroll down, we see the Companies House stamp to say that they've received the information, and we then get the contents. And it's down at pages 22 onwards that we actually find the account. So we've got auditors' reports, we've got details of directors' responsibilities, strategic reports and things like that up front. And then eventually we get to the statement of income or profit and loss account, the statement of financial position or balance sheet, and eventually down at page 27, there's the consolidated statement of cash flows. So if we scroll on, here we'll find that profit and loss account. It's going to tell us the amount of revenue. You'll see up at the top here, we have some categories. So we have sports and gaming, that's their betting business. They also have some football club related, Stoke City related football things, and a total. These things up at the top here where it says pounds, thousands, what that means is each of these numbers has been rounded down by £1,000. So that number there is actually £2.8 billion. It just makes it a more digestible number to have on the page, something with slightly fewer numbers in it. So you'll see in total, their revenue for the period ended 29th of March 2020 was £2.8 billion. Now you'll see on this page, we're not getting loads of detail, are we? So we get direct costs as one number, £489 million in the case of the betting business, and administrative expenses as one number, just under £2 billion for the betting business. All of which gives an operating profit for the year of £341 million in the betting business, and they made a loss in their football business. It's also worth pointing out that we have a comparative period. I think I said 2020 earlier. So the 2021 figures are in this total column here, but for 2020, as a comparison, we have those figures to the right-hand side as well. So the profit for the financial period, when they take an account of tax, in 2021 was £403 million compared to £120 million the previous year. There are then some other what we call non-trading items, so things like currency translation, foreign currency exchange differences. That's not really related to what they do on a day-to-day basis, but it does have an impact on the figures, and so they're listed down here. The next page shows us our balance sheet or our statement of financial position. And so you'll see we've got the 2 years again. So we've got 2021 on the left, 2020 on the right. They have £272 million worth of assets. Most of them are tangible. Remember, we've got that difference between tangible assets and intangible assets. Then moving down the page, we have the current assets and the current liabilities, or as they're known here, the creditors' amounts falling due within 1 year. So we can see a combination of stock or work in progress, debtors, i.e. people that owe them money, investments, cash in the bank, so £2 billion worth of cash in the bank. That's quite an impressive figure. And they owe £1.1 billion to other people. What's crucial in our understanding of any of this information is the column that's got the details of the notes. So this is where we would get an expansion of the information. So if we wanted to find out more about what makes up the creditors figure, we would go to note 17. So if I then scroll down, eventually we get to the notes to the accounts. And we're looking for number 17. So I'll keep going quite a bit further. And here we found it, note 17. So we have a combination of trade creditors, other creditors, and our favourite adjustment, accruals. So you can see those figures here. So there's just that bit more information in the notes to the accounts. If we scroll back up to our balance sheet, this is where we'll see the balancing figures. So we've got net assets of £2.798 billion. The majority of which is their profit and loss reserve. So the majority of the balancing item of the equity section, we've got a little bit of share capital, a little bit of share premium, £10 million of revaluation reserve. They must own some property. And 2.8 billion pounds, even put my teeth in, of profit and loss reserve or retained earnings, retained profit. As we know, cash is so important. So the third of our financial statements, the cash flow statement, we've come to now, and we'll see this big reconciliation from cash generated from operations right down to how much money is in the bank. So this is showing us where all the money came in from and where all the money has gone out to. So you'll see things like purchase of intangible assets, proceeds on disposal of intangible assets, purchase of tangible fixed assets, etc., etc. So they're all the investing activities. We can see the value of dividends that have been paid, and all of which, when we put it all together, it's a bit like our own bank statement. It tells us how much cash there was in the bank. So if we then think about how we're going to use this information, when we've looked at ratios, the majority of the ratios we've looked at have used information from the profit and loss or income statement and the balance sheet or statement of financial position. So when we're thinking about liquidity, we're focusing in on current assets and current liabilities here in the middle of the page on the balance sheet. When we're thinking about things that look at the capital employed, we're going to focus on the bottom end of the balance sheet for our capital employed. So any longer term liabilities and our equity. And we might then compare that to our income to get that return on capital employed, turnover coming from the top of the profit and loss account. We've also looked at profit margin, so gross profit, operating profit margin. And here we're just using the respective profit figure from the profit and loss as a proportion of our revenue or our turnover. And those days on hand ratios, those efficiency ratios, are going to look at stock, debtors, creditors, and then compare that information from the balance sheet, so back to our current assets, current liabilities, and compare that with our revenue or our cost of sales, our direct costs from the profit and loss account. So that's a really quick canter through a private company, through Bet365 accounts. But what about if the business is a public company? Well, you might find the information in a slightly different way. So I'm going to pick a business that I've been a customer of for quite some time, which is Naked Wines. And if I search for the investors section of Naked Wines, you'll see there's all sorts of information. And if I go, this is on their website rather than on the company's house website. Go to results, reports and presentations. I can change the year using this drop down. And if I look at the full year results, look, there's a webcast, there's a press release, there's a presentation, and there's a report. And if I go to that report, I've already got it downloaded. And here you'll see something that's a lot more colourful, a lot more glossy, a lot longer, 124 pages. And you'll find a lot of the same content. So we've got strategic report, we've got details of financial review, things about the business model, things about governance, who are the directors, and then eventually we'll get down to the financials. So at page 77, we'll get down to the financials. And here, what you'll probably observe is this looks even though it's a bigger business, it's a public company, the information looks even more simplified. So here is their profit and loss account, and you'll see it's really simplified. So in this case, it's a £350 million company. So it's actually, even though this is a public business, it's a smaller company than Bet365. Okay, so we're always thinking about context, thinking about size, thinking about scale, and important to look out for those ever important numbers up at the top to tell you if there is any rounding. Are they in pounds millions, pounds billions, pounds thousands, or are they just the number themselves? And again, so we scroll down, there's a bit more detail on some of their costs, but not a lot. Again, we'd need to go to some of the notes to get more information. And we've got some detail, because it's a public company, we've got some details about things called earnings per share down at the bottom. So each shareholder is on average receiving 3.3 pence of income for each of those shares. But the information is broadly the same, and we might analyze it and we might use it in the same way. There will also be, in an annual report like this, far more what I would call KPI reporting, far more numbers being pulled out with graphs and charts and things like that. To help us understand them. Here's the balance sheet. So again, we've got fixed or non-current assets up at the top. Then our current assets, that's where all that liquidity information is coming from. Current liabilities, a bit more of a breakdown than we had for the current liabilities in the Bet365 accounts. Details of who they owe money to. They have what they call deferred angel and other income. That's because of the way that they take subscription income from their customers. And then eventually we have the longer term liabilities, the longer term borrowing, and eventually the equity section. And again, they've got just under £80 million of retained profit or retained earnings. That's swiftly followed by the cash flow statement. Again, same information. Ultimately, it's telling us why is there £39 million worth of cash in the bank. And equally, so something that we might think about, the fact that if I just scroll up so that it's above my picture, they had £85 million in the bank at the end of the previous year. So what's happened? Where's that money gone to? There's a net decrease in cash of £45 million. And the information above will explain that. And actually, a lot of it is from their operating activity. And that'll reflect the fact that as people have come out of the pandemic, they've potentially been living in a slightly different way. And there might have been a dip in cash flow into the Naked Wines business. Back up to the front of the report, as I say, you'll see lots of pictures, lots of information, lots of charts. Ultimately, what this document is designed to do is to tell a story to the investors. We have a clear strategy for the future. Why would you invest your money with our business? That's what this document is designed to do. And as part of that, they're showing you the financial results of the business. So, two businesses, two different ways of presenting the information, two different ways of finding it. Why don't you go and have an explore, see if you can think of a company that you're interested in, see if you can find their accounts and have a look around and see what information you can find.